Leora Venstrom stood atop the ruins of what had once been the Sydney Opera House, watching the Braxian ships descend through Earth's atmosphere like metallic locusts. 5 years had passed since the invasion, since humanity's greatest cities had been reduced to ash and rubble. The Braxians, tall, six-limbed beings with chitinous exoskeletons, had arrived without warning, without mercy. Beautiful day for subjugation, isn't it? Commander Thorn Raelis approached from behind, his battle-scarred face half hidden beneath a hood. As one of the few remaining military leaders of the human resistance, Thorn carried both hope and despair in equal measure. "They're bringing in new mining equipment," Leora said, lowering her binoculars, "harvesting more of our core metals. The Braxians had conquered Earth primarily for its resources. Humanity had been an afterthought, an inconvenience to be managed. Through selective culling and forced labor, most survivors now lived in cramped internment zones, working endlessly to extract Earth's wealth for their alien overlords." "Did Kalen make contact?" Thorn asked, his voice barely above a whisper despite their secure location. Leora nodded. "The message came through the old satellite relay. It was fragmented but enough to confirm." The Resistance had been waiting for this moment. Before the invasion, humanity had launched its most ambitious project, the Void Voyager, a massive colony ship carrying 10,000 of Earth's brightest minds. When the Braxians appeared, the ship had been ordered to flee rather than return to a doomed planet. For years, most assumed it lost to the cold emptiness of space. How many survived? Thorn's question hung in the air. "Enough," Leora replied, "and they've been busy." In the distance, a Braxian patrol vessel hovered over what remained of the harbor, its scanning beams sweeping methodically across the water. The aliens had grown complacent in their dominion, convinced that humanity had been effectively neutered. "They've developed something out there in the void," Leora continued, "something that might give us a fighting chance." Thorn's expression darkened. "The Braxians have outposts throughout the solar system. They'll detect any approaching vessel long before it reaches Earth." "Not this one." Leora pulled a small data drive from her pocket. "Kalen sent specs. They're calling it the Umbra." The holographic image that appeared between them showed a vessel unlike anything humanity had built before, completely black as though carved from the darkness between stars itself. Its design defied conventional aerospace principles. "It absorbs all scanning frequencies," Leora explained. "It's practically invisible to detection systems." "That's impossible," Thorn muttered, but hope flickered in his eyes. "So was faster-than-light travel before the Void Voyager project," Leora countered. "They've had 5 years without Braxian interference to advance our technology. 5 years, with the best minds humanity had to offer." A distant explosion drew their attention. Another round of pacification had begun in the eastern internment zone. The Braxians maintained control through regular demonstrations of power, random destruction, that kept the surviving human population in a constant state of terror. "When?" Thorn asked simply. 3 days, Leora replied. "The Umbra will enter Earth's atmosphere in the dead of night. We need to have teams ready at these coordinates." As the sun set over the ruins of Sydney, painting the broken skyline in hues of crimson and gold, the two resistance leaders began to plan. For the first time in 5 years, they allowed themselves to feel something dangerous: hope. In orbit, high above them, undetected by Braxian monitoring stations, a tiny distortion appeared in the fabric of space. The void rippled, preparing to deliver its revenge. The Umbra slipped into Earth's upper atmosphere like a whisper, its advanced hull absorbing heat without a trace of the telltale entry flare that would normally alert orbital defenses. Within, the ship's command center, Admiral Revna Keldricht, watched Earth grow larger in the view screen, her heart heavy with both anticipation and dread. "Stealth systems holding at optimal levels," reported navigator Fyodor Lazesh, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. The Braxian detection grid remains unaware of our presence. 5 years, Revna murmured, more to herself than to the bridge crew. 5 years in the void, while they destroyed our home. The Void Voyager's journey had been one of transformation. When they'd fled Earth, they'd been explorers and scientists forced into exile. They returned as warriors and avengers. Their ship, having birthed the Umbra deep in the darkness beyond Neptune's orbit. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Isolde Vex from her station, "we're receiving the Resistance confirmation signal. Ground teams are in position at the designated coordinates." Revna nodded. "Begin deployment sequence for the shadow drones." The Umbra's hull silently parted in multiple locations, releasing thousands of small, dark objects that plummeted toward Earth. Each drone, no larger than a human hand, contained technology that would have been considered theoretical before the invasion. Quantum-entangled communication nodes, immune to Braxian interference. Weapon schematics that could be fabricated using common materials. And most importantly, the formula. The formula was what had kept the crew of the Umbra alive during the darkest moments of their exile. When supplies had dwindled and hope had faded, Chief Scientist Erebus Nightshade had made his discovery, the Braxian weakness. "Deployment at 80%, reported Weapons Officer Talon Corvo. "No detection from enemy systems." On the surface below, Leora Venstrom felt the ground vibrate slightly as a shadow drone impacted nearby. She approached cautiously, Thorn, covering her with a salvaged Braxian pulse rifle. The small device unfurled like a mechanical flower, projecting a holographic interface. "This is Leora Venstrom. Resistance identification Theta 97 Delta," she whispered into the interface. The drone processed her voice pattern before responding, "Identity confirmed. Uploading tactical package and formula specifications." Across the globe, similar scenes played out as resistance cells recovered the shadow drones. For the first time since the invasion, Earth's scattered defenders were receiving the same intelligence simultaneously, coordinating through channels the Braxians couldn't detect. Aboard the Umbra, Revna studied the tactical display showing the locations of successfully deployed drones. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. "Begin Phase 2 preparations." In the ship's hold, rows of specialized combat suits stood ready, each occupied by a member of the Phantom Brigade, soldiers who had trained relentlessly during the 5-year journey. They had left Earth as civilians. They returned as something else entirely. "Admiral," called Fyodor, alarm evident in his voice. "We have movement from the Braxian lunar base, multiple vessels launching." Revna's expression remained calm. "Have they detected us?" "Negative," Fyodor replied after checking his instruments. "Routine patrol pattern. But their trajectory will bring them uncomfortably close to our position in approximately 17 minutes. Hold position," Revna ordered. "Divert additional power to stealth systems." As the Umbra hung silently in low Earth orbit, the Braxian patrol ships passed by, oblivious to the human vessel hiding in plain sight. One patrol ship came so close that the bridge crew could see individual Braxians moving behind viewports. "They've enslaved our world," Talon whispered, hatred burning in his eyes. "Made our people into their labor force." "Patience," Revna cautioned. "The formula needs 24 hours to synthesize on the surface. Then the real war begins." On Earth below, Leora examined the chemical formula displayed by the shadow drone. "This is it?" she asked incredulously. "This will harm the Braxians?" "Not just harm them," Thorn replied, understanding dawning as he studied the molecular structure. "This will destroy them from within, their biology. It can't process these compounds." As night fell across a conquered Earth, thousands of resistance cells began mixing common chemicals according to precise instructions, creating a biological agent specifically engineered to target Braxian physiology while leaving humans completely unaffected. In the darkness above, the black ship waited. Dawn broke over the ruins of Paris as Marek Frost crouched beside the makeshift laboratory, watching tension play across the faces of the resistance chemists. They had worked through the night, following the precise instructions delivered by the shadow drone. The resulting clear liquid, now being loaded into makeshift dispersal devices, represented humanity's first real hope since the invasion. "Is it ready?" Marek asked, his voice rough from years of inhaling Braxian mining dust. Chief Chemist Eloan Trellis nodded, her exhausted eyes brightening with fierce determination. "The formula is stable. According to the Umbra's data, exposure will trigger a cascading breakdown in their respiratory systems within minutes." "And you're certain it won't affect humans?" Marek had lost his family to Braxian bioweapons during the initial invasion. The irony of using similar tactics against their oppressors wasn't lost on him. "Completely different biological pathways," Eloan confirmed. "The formula targets specific proteins in their breathing apparatus that have no equivalent in human physiology." Across the globe, similar scenes unfolded as resistance cells prepared for coordinated action. The shadow drones had delivered not just the formula, but precise timing for maximum effect. The Braxians maintained rigid schedules, a product of their hive-like social structure, making their movements predictable. High above Earth, the Umbra maintained its silent vigil. On the bridge, Admiral Revna reviewed tactical projections with her senior officers. "The Braxian command structure is hierarchical," explained Strategic Officer Darius Wolf, highlighting sections of a holographic display. "Each regional governor reports to the Supreme Overseer, who arrived 3 months after the initial invasion. And we're certain the Overseer is in the Tehran complex?" Revna asked. "Confirmed by Resistance intelligence," Darius nodded. "The Phantom Brigade's primary objective will be to eliminate the Overseer while the formula disrupts their ground forces." Lieutenant Isolde approached with updated telemetry. "Admiral, we're detecting increased communications between Braxian outposts. They may suspect something." "They sense the change in the wind," Revna replied. "But they don't know what's coming." On Earth, Leora and Thorn had infiltrated the perimeter of a major Braxian processing facility. The massive complex processed both Earth resources and human workers. Those deemed too weak for continued labor were processed alongside the minerals. "Transport approaching," Thorn whispered, watching the large Braxian hover vehicle approaching the facility gates. It would be carrying new human workers from the internment zones. Leora checked her dispersion device, a modified agricultural sprayer filled with the formula. "Remember, we need to hit their breathing apparatuses directly. Aim for the neck joints, where their exoskeletons are thinnest." The transport slowed at the gate, Braxian guards moving to process the new arrivals. Leora gave the signal, and 20 resistance fighters emerged from hiding places, sprayers at the ready. The first Braxian barely had time to raise its weapon before being doused with the formula. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien began to convulse, its exoskeleton creaking as it clutched at its neck, breathing slits. A high-pitched keening sound emerged as more guards collapsed, their movements becoming erratic and then ceasing altogether. "It works," Thorn breathed, watching in astonishment as the fearsome invaders died before his eyes. "It actually works." The humans inside the transport stared in shock as their captors collapsed. Leora quickly moved to free them. "We're resistance," she explained to the confused prisoners. "Humanity is fighting back today. Similar attacks occurred simultaneously at Braxian installations worldwide." The aliens, accustomed to facing an enemy with inferior weapons and no coordination, found themselves suddenly vulnerable on multiple fronts. In orbit, Admiral Revner received the first reports of successful strikes. "Initiate Phase 3, she ordered. "Deploy the Phantom Brigade." From the Umbra's hull, drop pods detached and plummeted toward Earth, each containing members of the specially trained assault team. Their target, the Terran Complex and the Supreme Overseer of Earth's occupation. As the pods streaked through the atmosphere, Braxian defense systems finally detected the intrusion. Alarm signals blared across their communication network as they realized a coordinated attack was underway. After 5 years of dominance, the hunters had become the hunted, and the Void had returned their nightmare to them. Commander Valen Duskmore felt the impact as his drop pod crashed through the reinforced dome of the Terran complex. His advanced combat suit absorbed the shock, internal systems compensating as he burst from the smoking pod, weapon already firing. 2 Braxian guards collapsed before they could sound an alert, their exoskeletons punctured by specialized ammunition designed to penetrate their natural armor. "Duskmore on sight," he reported through the quantum-entangled comm system. Proceeding to objective. Around the massive complex, 11 other pods had breached different sections, each delivering a member of the Phantom Brigade. They moved like wraiths through the Braxian stronghold, their combat suits rendering them nearly invisible to detection systems. "Be advised," came Admiral Revner's voice through the comm. "Braxian fleet vessels are changing course, returning to Earth. Estimated arrival 43 minutes. Valen acknowledged the update as he moved deeper into the complex. The Phantom Brigade had trained for this mission during the long voyage through the Void, studying Braxian architecture and defense protocols from data gathered before the Void Voyager's departure. Each member carried not only weapons, but specialized equipment to disable Braxian technology. "Contact, heavy resistance in Sector 7, reported Brigade member Astrid Moonshadow, the sound of energy weapons discharging in the background of her transmission. "Need assistance?" Valen asked, already calculating the fastest route to her position. "Negative," Astrid replied, her breathing controlled despite the battle. "Nothing I can't handle." On Earth's surface, the resistance operations continued to expand. The formula had proven devastatingly effective against Braxian ground forces, spreading confusion and panic through their ranks. For creatures accustomed to strict hierarchy and order, the sudden coordinated assault from their supposedly defeated human enemies created cascading failures in command structure. Lyora led a group of newly freed prisoners and resistance fighters toward the alien communication array that dominated what had once been Moscow's Red Square. If they could capture it intact, they could broadcast false orders to the returning Braxian fleet. "The Braxians are calling for reinforcements," Thorne reported, intercepting alien communications with equipment provided by the shadow drones. "Ships from their outer system bases are converging." Lyora's expression hardened. "Then we need to move faster." In orbit, the Umbra was no longer hiding. With its presence discovered, Admiral Revner had ordered the activation of the ship's weapon systems, technology developed during their exile, combining human innovation with principles gleaned from studying Braxian wreckage encountered in deep space. "Braxian vessels approaching weapon range," reported Weapons Officer Talon. "Their energy signatures indicate they've diverted maximum power to forward shields." "They expect a frontal assault," Revner nodded. "Typical Braxian thinking, direct and unimaginative. Deploy the void mines, small dart-like objects ejected from the Umbra's hull, appearing to drift harmlessly in space. The approaching Braxian vessels ignored them, focusing their scanning arrays on the larger human ship. Inside the Terran complex, Valen fought his way through increasingly desperate Braxian defenders. The closer he got to the central chamber, the more elite the opposition became, These weren't ordinary soldiers, but the Overseer's personal guard, equipped with advanced weapons and armor. "Brigade status," he called as he took cover behind a fallen pillar, energy bolts scorching the air around him. One by one, the Phantom Brigade members reported in, each having secured their objectives despite varying levels of resistance. Only one remained silent. "Moonshadow report," Valen ordered, concern edging his voice. Static answered him, then a pained voice. "Proceeding to secondary objective. Primary target. Moving to escape vessel." Valen cursed under his breath. The Overseer was attempting to flee. "All brigade units converge on Landing Bay 3. Do not let that ship launch." As he fought his way toward the landing bay, the Braxian fleet in orbit above encountered the void mines. The seemingly innocent objects suddenly activated, each creating a miniature artificial gravity well that twisted space around the Braxian ships. Metal hulls groaned and buckled under forces they were never designed to withstand. "Direct hit on 3 enemy capital ships," Talon reported with grim satisfaction. "Their formation is breaking." Admiral Revner watched the tactical display, her expression revealing nothing of the vindication she felt. "Bring us about. Target their flagship and fire when ready." The Umbra's main weapon powered up, drawing energy from what appeared to be a contained slice of the void itself. Absolute darkness harnessed as a destructive force. When it fired, it seemed less like an energy beam and more like a concentrated absence of everything, tearing through the Braxian flagship as though reality itself rejected the alien vessel's existence. In the Tehran complex landing bay, Valen arrived to find Astrid wounded but still fighting, her combat suit damaged but functional. Together with the converging Phantom Brigade, they surrounded the Overseer's escape vessel. Inside, the Supreme Overseer of Earth's occupation prepared to abandon the planet it had conquered, leaving its subordinates to face humanity's unexpected resurgence. The escape vessel's engines hummed with power as the bay doors began to open to the sky above. It never got the chance to flee. The Phantom Brigade struck from all sides at once, their coordinated assault overwhelming even the elite guard. Valen himself breached the vessel's hatch, coming face to face with the architect of humanity's suffering. "How?" the Overseer demanded, its translator rendering the chittering sounds into human speech. "You were broken, subjugated. You should have made sure the Void Voyager never returned," Valen replied, raising his weapon. Above, the battle for Earth's orbit reached its climax as humanity's vengeance descended from the stars. The fall of the Supreme Overseer sent shockwaves through the Braxian occupation force. Across Earth, alien commanders received the same footage, their leader defeated by humans wearing advanced technology that shouldn't exist. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Some Braxian units fought with increased desperation. Others began attempting emergency evacuations. In what remained of London, resistance fighter Orion Blackwood led a group of former prisoners in storming the Tower internment zone. The formula had cleared the outer defenses, leaving bewildered Braxian administrators trying to coordinate a response without clear leadership. "Sector 4 and 5 are secure," reported Orion's lieutenant, Phaedra Ridge. "Medical teams are attending to the worst cases, but most prisoners are able to fight." Orion nodded grimly. 5 years of brutal labor under alien taskmasters had not broken the human spirit. It had merely tempered it. Now, with weapons in hand and freedom in sight, the former prisoners fought with ferocious determination. "The Braxians are trying to destroy their data cores," Phaedra added. "They're deleting records of their operations here." "Not just operations," Orion replied. "Evidence of their experiments on humans. We need those records intact." They fought their way to the central administration hub, where Braxian officers were frantically attempting to purge systems. The aliens turned to face the human intruders, weapons raised, but found themselves outmatched by the fury of those they had tormented for years. In orbit, the space battle had transformed into a rout. The Umbra's advanced weapons tore through Braxian vessels that had dominated Earth's skies for half a decade. Admiral Revner directed the assault with cold precision, prioritizing enemy weapons platforms that could threaten the resistance forces on the surface. "Admiral," called Navigator Fyodor, "we're detecting multiple FTL signatures approaching the system. Braxian reinforcements." Revner's expression remained unchanged. "How many ships?" "At least 30 vessels, including 3 Dreadnought class." The bridge fell silent. The Umbra, for all its advanced technology, could not defeat such a force alone. "Message from Earth Resistance Command," Lieutenant Isolde reported. "They've secured multiple Braxian communication arrays and weapons platforms." A smile touched Revner's lips for the first time since returning to Earth orbit. "Establish a direct link. It's time to implement the Lazarus Protocol." On Earth's surface, Leora received the transmission from the Umbra directly into the captured Braxian Command Center. The alien technology hummed around her as she reviewed the schematics sent from the black ship. "Can we do this?" Thorne asked, looking at the complex instructions. "We have to," Leora replied simply. "The Braxians built these planetary defense cannons to protect their mining operations from potential competitors. Now they'll serve a different purpose." Across the globe, resistance forces worked frantically to repurpose captured Braxian weapon systems. The shadow drones provided translation interfaces that allowed humans to operate alien technology that had previously been incomprehensible. In the Tehran complex, Valen and the surviving members of the Phantom Brigade secured crucial data from the Overseer's personal archives. What they found confirmed their worst fears. Earth had been merely the first step in a larger Braxian expansion plan. Other human colony worlds established before the invasion were next on their list. "Admiral," Valen reported, "the Braxians know about Nova Haven and the Proxima settlements. They were planning to move against them once Earth's resources were depleted." "Then we have more work to do," Revner replied. "But first, we need to survive the next hour." Status of the Lazarus Protocol? Ground teams report 70% of the planetary defense grid is under human control, Strategic Officer Darius reported. "Minimum operational threshold achieved." Revner nodded. "Transmit the activation codes." Across Earth's surface, massive Braxian defense cannons that had stood silent during the occupation, weapons too valuable to be used against the scattered human resistance, now powered up. Their original purpose had been to defend against space-based threats to Braxian interests. Now under human control, they targeted the approaching Braxian reinforcement fleet. As the alien armada emerged from FTL at the edge of the solar system, they encountered something their intelligence reports hadn't prepared them for. Their own weapons turned against them, coordinated by the black ship that had materialized from the void. The first salvo from Earth's surface struck 3 Braxian vessels simultaneously, the energy beams punching through shields calibrated to defend against different attack patterns. The survivors adjusted course, trying to position themselves out of the defense cannon's firing arcs. They found themselves driven into the waiting guns of the Umbra. "This is for Earth," Admiral Revner said quietly, as she gave the order to fire. The void weapon lashed out again, tearing reality around the lead Braxian dreadnought. The massive ship shuddered, then broke apart as fundamental forces ceased to function properly within its hull. On Earth below, humans watched the space battle. Reflected in their skies, bright flashes of light and darkness as their vengeance unfolded among the stars. After 5 years of hopelessness, they witnessed their oppressors' might crumbling before the combined force of human ingenuity and determination. The chains were breaking, link by link, ship by ship, and the void watched, satisfied. 3 months. After what became known as the Liberation Day, Earth was transformed. Braxian structures still dominated many skylines, but now they flew human flags. The alien technology, once used to subjugate, had been repurposed for reconstruction. Where mining operations had scarred the land, healing efforts were underway, guided by ecological knowledge preserved by the Void Voyagers' databases. Leora stood at the edge of a reclaimed Braxian landing field outside Barcelona, watching as human engineers worked alongside the Phantom Brigade to retrofit captured alien vessels. The ships that had once brought terror would now carry humanity's ambassadors to the stars, specifically to warn the outlying human colonies about the Braxian threat. "The Helios is almost ready for launch," Admiral Revna said, approaching from behind. After the victory, she had established a temporary command center on Earth while the Umbra underwent repairs in orbit. "You're certain the Braxians will return?" Leora asked, though she already knew the answer. "What we defeated was merely their expeditionary force," Revna confirmed. "Their home systems lie 20 light-years distant, according to the Overseers' records. They will have felt the loss of contact with Earth, and they will respond." The revelation had sobered humanity's celebration of victory. The war wasn't over. It had merely begun. "How long do we have?" "Their closest major fleet base would require at least 2 years to mobilize and reach us, even at their fastest FTL speeds," Revna replied. "It gives us time to prepare." Across the reclaimed planet, that preparation was already underway. The Void Voyagers' scientific breakthroughs were being implemented on a global scale. Defensive systems were being established in key orbital positions. Most importantly, the knowledge gained during 5 years in the Void was being disseminated to Earth's survivors. In New Shanghai, now headquarters for the United Earth Defense Council, Thorne oversaw the training of new pilots for the growing human fleet. The captured Braxian vessels combined with human innovations created hybrid ships that incorporated the best of both technologies. "The Void taught us much," Valen Duskmore explained to a class of recruits, most bearing the physical marks of years under Braxian rule. "Out there, with nothing but darkness surrounding us, we learned that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our resources, it's our refusal to accept defeat." The Phantom Brigade had become instructors and leaders, sharing the combat techniques developed during their exile. Their advanced suits, once unique, were being mass-produced using repurposed Braxian manufacturing facilities. In what had once been the Tehran complex, now transformed into Earth's largest research center, Eloin Trellis led a team of scientists studying Braxian biology. The formula that had proved so effective was being refined. New variants developed to counter potential adaptations. "They underestimated us," Eloin told her colleagues as they reviewed genetic samples taken from fallen Braxian warriors. "They saw us as merely resources to be used and discarded. They never understood that adversity doesn't weaken humans. It transforms us." The Umbra remained Earth's primary defensive asset. Now joined by 2 sister ships constructed from salvaged Braxian technology, it patrolled the solar system's edge, a silent guardian against potential threats. Admiral Revna had established an early warning network extending to the Kuiper Belt, using technology that would have seemed magical before the invasion. 6 months after Liberation Day, the first human colony ships prepared to depart. Unlike the desperate exodus of the Void Voyager, these vessels carried colonists with purpose, to establish forward bases in nearby star systems, creating a defensive perimeter against the expected Braxian counterattack. "We go not just to survive, but to thrive," declared Orion Blackwood, commander of the colony ship Prometheus. "What we build among the stars will ensure humanity never faces extinction again." As the new ships launched, their drives glowing against the night sky, Earth's survivors gathered to watch. Among them stood those who had endured the occupation and those who had returned from the void. United by shared suffering and shared purpose, they looked to the stars, not with fear, but with determination. In orbit, aboard the Umbra, Admiral Revna stood before the viewport, watching Earth grow smaller as her ship prepared to escort the colonists. And to their destination. The planet bore the scars of invasion and resistance, but already new growth was visible. Green spreading across regions once laid waste, cities rising from rubble. "Admiral," Lieutenant Isolde called from her station, "long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity at the edge of the system." Revna turned from the viewport, her expression unchanging. "Braxian? No," Isolde replied, confusion evident in her voice. "The energy signature doesn't match any known species in our database." Strategic Officer Darius joined them at the sensor display. "It appears to be observing us." Revna studied the readings silently before issuing her orders. "Maintain course. With the colony fleet, alert Earth Defense Command of the contact, but recommend no aggressive action. Whatever it is, it's witnessing humanity's resurrection." As the Umbra led humanity's new pioneers into the depths of space, the unknown observer continued its silent vigil. Perhaps it had watched the Braxian invasion years before. Perhaps it had seen countless species rise and fall across the galaxy. What it witnessed now, however, was something rare and remarkable. A species that had faced extinction and emerged stronger, their spirit unbroken, their determination hardened by suffering. Humanity had returned from the void, and the stars themselves took notice. In the darkness between worlds, the black ships carried humanity's future forward, no longer fleeing, but advancing with purpose. The void that had once been their refuge now became their road to the stars, and the Braxians, when they eventually returned to reclaim their conquest, would find not the broken remnants of a defeated species, but a forged and tempered humanity, one that had stared into the abyss and returned bearing its power. The void had taught humanity its secrets. The galaxy would never be the same.